Welcome, everyone, to Paranormal Round Table. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me, as always, is Sal.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Glad to be here.
Sal Manila.
That's it. That's it. You know,
So,
pestilence.
It's like four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Exactly, salmonella.
You just choose to be pestilence?
Yeah, there you go. He's the most subtle.
It's your lot in life.
There you go.
I've always thought, I would think you view it more as war.
Well, yeah, that too. But, you know, when I'm sleeping and chilling out, salmonella. Pestilence, you know. It's better than being famine. I'd be in trouble.
You wear it like a badge of honor.
There you go. Hey, you got to do what you got to do, you know.
I used to tease Taz, Willie. We used to like me, Squid, him, and D are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And I would always tell him he was famine because he was skinny. Because he'd be there eating up everybody's food. He never gets fat.
Yeah, how do people do that? No, I've never had that issue.
Mm.
You know, it must be nice, I guess, in lots of ways, because eat what you want, and then, are you going to put on some weight? No,
they could just eat whatever they want.
Yeah,
I could look at a freaking jelly bean and I gain a pound. I got to be real careful what I eat, dude.
Hey, same here these days, man.
Dude, this past weekend, I went and we ate fajitas at Lupe Tortilla. You know, it's really good. Yeah, really good fajitas. Let me tell you, folks, their beef fajitas are the best. I don't eat much beef anymore, but I ate there with the sister-in-law.
Oh,
she came
nice.
to town, and we went, and I ate some fajitas, and I tell you what, man, the next day, I ate some more stuff. I ate like a Taco Ranch or something, which is another good taco place. So I figured, okay, I ate 2 days, not like pigging out, but I ate a couple of days of not good. I gained like 4 pounds. It was unreal. I thought, oh man, that's just, this scale's messed up. What's wrong with it? No, I gained 4 pounds, literally.
Oh, hey, I can believe it. I went and seen my doctor the other day, and we were talking about blood sugars and all this all that stuff, right? And of course, since I've been on this diet, I've dropped quite a few pounds versus what I was, and and I've gotten used to it now, so it doesn't really bother me, all the restricted diet. So long story short, we were talking, and we got to talking about servings, and she mentioned, you just eat a small, handful of almonds or whatever, and I said, sure, but that won't hold me over. And she just kind of smiled, and I said, well, I don't understand what a serving is, I said, because I think, wouldn't that depend on a size? I mean, and she was looked like she was like 5'3", 5'4".
The doctor told you this?
No, I was telling the doctor this.
Yeah, the doctor.
I said.
And she's the doctor.
Right. I was saying, Doc, I said, but what's a serving for you doesn't necessarily, fill up a person my size.
You got to tell her, haven't you heard different strokes?
Well, that's what
might be right for you is
not right for me.
Yeah, exactly.
There
it's
you
like
go.
that.
Oh, she just chuckled after I said that, but I think it's a legitimate question. What's a serving to a person who's 5 foot, 5'1", versus a person who's 6'4" like you? That can't be the same.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because you eat a pound of chicken, for some people that fills them up. For someone like you and I, a pound of chicken, we're like, okay, we just got started.
I'm not me. I can eat. If I eat a pound of chicken, I'm stuffed. I would not.
Really?
I can eat.
Shoot, I can. Well, I don't know. I like me some chicken, so
Well, I eat a lot of those meals that are like what do you call them? The pre-prepared. Oh my gosh. Pre-planned meals or whatever. So you get them and they're pre-packaged, and so I get them from H-E-B, Snap Kitchen, and I get the ones from Sprouts.
Nice.
And so they have they're all about the same size.
Awesome.
300 to 400 calories, and you don't go nuts.
Nice.
But I did when we went to Lupe.
Well, every now and then you got to reward yourself, but
but not by adding 4 pounds on. That's a big reward.
Yeah, but for a guy like you, your size, my size, 4 pounds is a matter of sweating it out in one workout or not.
Yeah, you got to go hit the gym. But anyways, folks, we're not going to talk about this. Speaking of which, I was going to tell you.
We're going to talk about chicken.
We're going to talk about, a little kind of.
In a different context.
The gym. Now,
Yeah.
I have a story. Don't let me ever forget that. I have a story about a haunted gym.
Oh, nice.
I do. And it actually happened to me and some friends.
Oh.
Well, I was
great.
there during part of it because it was a gym that I used to work out with out in Bee Caves.
Oh, nice.
I used to work out at. Yeah, my friend Bones used to work there. or work,
Nice.
so there was a lot of weird stuff that happened out there. So one of these days we're going to talk about that, folks. But today,
speaking of chicken, all you chickens out there better just grab your blankets.
yeah, today we're going to actually do a little. I'm gonna say this. Some people have said some of your shows are really scary. Well, this one is pretty creepy.
Well, let's shoot them the email and then jump right in.
Go ahead,
man.
do the honors.
All right, guys. Remember, you can send us your stories. DasWolfman88@gmail.com.
Wolf and Sal.
Yes,
gmail.com.
wolfandsal@gmail.com. Send us your stories. We love to hear them. And of course, I've gotten more diligent about recording and and storing all the emails I've gotten, so that way, in the event of a collapse of something, I still got your stories. I can go back and read them.
Not me. I just get rid of everything. I used to get a lot of emails. Now I'm getting most people on Messenger.
Yeah,
because a lot of people are just sending me friend requests. And folks, if you sent me a friend request, do me a favor and let me know that you're a fan of the show. Because if I don't know you and I don't know that you're a fan of the show, I don't know who you are.
We love your stories, folks.
Yeah.
We do. So keep sending them.
We're getting a lot of stories though still, but my Messenger is just. It's like every day. It's about 14 a day, which is cool. Some are kind of small,
yeah.
But then you get some that are really long. And now if you're gonna send me these really long ones, just put in an email.
Yeah, it'll be great. Either way, but folks, thanks. Up until this point, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for all the stories. Keep them coming. So, with that said, let's get into today's topic.
Today's topic, because it is October.
Yeah,
okay, the hag.
Oh, Baba Yaga.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Baba Yaga or Baba Yogi, Baba Gogi, what's it called? The Baba Roga, whatever.
Yeah, Baba Roga.
It's all these different names.
Yaga Baba.
Yeah.
It's a Slavic in origin. Most people that have seen the John Wick movies, you understand.
Oh, yeah, they called him that.
They call him the Baba Yaga.
It's kind of weird because it's like calling him a witch.
Well, no, they said he's the one you send to go kill the Baba Yaga.
Oh. Okay.
So
he's the boogeyman.
He's the killer of the boogeyman, the boogeyman killer. It's kind of like they say, the Chuck Norris joke. Ghosts check under their bed at night for Chuck Norris, every time they go to sleep, that kind of thing. So anyways, this Baba Yaga thing has been,
well, the reason we're talking Baba Yaga is because the guy that told me the first one we're going to get into,
yeah,
and we were talking about it before we started recording the show. Me and Armando were talking about it. We've been talking about it for a while, but this guy is the one that sent me the story, or that gave me the story about the black-eyed kids. That's the guy that actually I was working with him,
right?
And he's from Eastern Europe. And if you go back on one of the past episodes, he talked about the black-eyed kid. I talked about the black-eyed kids, and it was him that had that experienced it.
Oh, wow!
And of course, you remember that, right?
Yeah, I remember the story about the black-eyed kids. So it's that same guy at the guard check. We're talking that same guy. Oh, wow! Makes you wonder.
Well, go ahead.
Makes you wonder what kind of stuff he's had to deal with throughout life, apart from black-eyed kids and now the Baba Yaga.
Well, what happened was that incident touched off a conversation between me and him.
Oh, okay.
Because after that, he said it was the weirdest thing that ever happened to him since he was a kid.
Right.
And I was like, well, now what happened to you when you were a kid? Well, he didn't tell me at that time. But later on, we worked, and this is weird, okay? We worked in a place where Anthony, he's in the studio right here, he can tell you, this place was haunted too. It was called Garden Terrace down, It used to be a rest home.
Oh.
And it became it had some really weird energy.
A lot of elderly people have passed.
A lot of people passed away there. So I had a really we were working together in this place, and me and him, we I helped him get a job at that company that I worked with at that time.
Right.
Now, since then, my company ended up taking that contract, and we've done it off and on for years now. But I personally won't work there because weird stuff happens there, and I don't really like that place. It's got a weird energy, especially in I would say the west. What would you say, Anthony? The west wing of that place, yeah, is where it's got some weird stuff.
That's amazing.
And so
but trippy at the same time.
It is trippy, but the guy I worked with, me and him began to talk about it because we saw some weird stuff there. which I will get into in a later episode. But he told me, he's like, when I was a kid, I had problems with a hag. He called it, and the name he used was not a hag, because that's what we call it. But when he described it to him, he says it was like a witch,
right,
that would appear to him and his brother. Now there were 4 of them, 4 brothers, and him and his little brother. He was the youngest brother. Him and his brother that was the littlest one next to him, that was a little bit older than him. They shared a room.
Right.
Now he lived in Eastern Europe. This was under communism. But his dad had a pretty good job. He actually worked for the party, so he had a little bit of better living situation. But they still had to live like 2 families to a house.
A flat or whatever,
yeah. So his dad's brother and his kids, they lived in part of the house, okay? It was like a 2-family home or whatever. And then he lived in the other side with his family. And so that's that's not important, but that's part of the story. So what happened was him and his brother were sharing a room, okay? And when they moved into this house, it was before they turned it into like a 2-family home. It was just a giant, like
kind of like open space.
It was a very big house, according to him, very big, 3 stories.
Oh wow!
Yeah. And so he said that the kids were all like on the 2nd floor, and his parents they were on the top floor, the adults. And then he had an uncle another uncle that had come to live that didn't have any kids,
right?
And he slept on the floor with the kids.
Correct.
Now here's what happened: we were telling ghost stories, or we were talking about this stuff, and he was actually telling another guy we worked with his black-eyed kid story.
Right.
And it came up about the hag. Well, that guy that we were working with actually started talking about it. And this guy said, he goes, I have a story about that. He goes, because I lived in a haunted house. Now, there were some other things that happened in that house that he told me about, and I could get into that, but this is more about the hag, so we're going to stick to that.
Yeah. Okay,
now, folks, if you remember, I think I talked about in episode 2, I had my own experience with the hag. And we'll go back to that. But so what happened to this guy? He was living in this house when he was a kid, and there was activity, spiritual ghost activity, whatever. I think he said the first thing that ever happened was he was going to use a toaster oven, which was, in the Eastern European culture, whatever, that was in that time period. Not everybody had toasters.
Oh no, that's a big luxury.
Yeah,
back
so it was
then.
so it was a big deal.
Soviet
so
era.
the toaster moved in front of him and his 2 of his brothers, and then it just kept moving until it fell off onto the floor, and so his dad and his uncle flipped out.
They saw it too?
No, they didn't see it.
Oh,
they just thought the kids were lying and messing around, and so it was like him and his 2 brothers. I think he said his cousin was there too. And so the dad and the uncle came in there and they got punished. And that was he said that was the first thing he remembers happening that was weird. But that touched off a whole series of events that took place after that. But this entity that was in their house took the form of a witch. And the way it looked, it had that look about it, that it was like a female, very pale, and it would contort itself.
Holy smokes.
It would contort itself. That's what he told me. Now, this is stories he told me over about a 3-day weekend that we worked together at that place.
Right.
It was a 2-man post at first when they were doing the construction. So it was because there was a lot of work being done there. It was a big place. And so they had 2 guards there, and our shifts overlapped, which is kind of weird, but that's how they did it.
Before you get going any further, can you describe or elaborate on what he meant by it would contort?
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that.
Okay,
and what
good.
he said, though, too, was even weirder, that the creature, the way it appeared was yellow. Like the skin was yellow. He said that when the lights were off, he was very descriptive about this thing because it haunted him as a kid for like 3 years in this house he lived in.
Holy
because over there
Jesus.
in the Eastern Bloc,
Gosh,
in the Soviet era, you didn't like move around. You didn't go,
No.
oh, there's a ghost. comrade, can we move to another house? They're like, no, we shoot you. There is no goal. Shut up. You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're living under communism. There's no, you know,
yeah.
The Soviet Socialist Republic was not going to be like, okay, go ahead and move, comrade.
Well,
We're cool with that.
The only place they'd tell you to move if you wanted to move
was
so
the
bad,
Gulag.
You'll go to Gulag.
That's pretty much it. There was no like, let's move down the street because some stuff's happening.
Yeah.
Now, you got to remember, too, these kids weren't influenced by movies like Poltergeist or Amity Horror.
None of
whatever.
that was available.
That wasn't happening over there. Okay, they weren't going to McDonald's and they didn't have none of that. Okay, they did not have the pop culture like we had. They weren't listening to Journey.
They didn't get McDonald's till what, like 1984, 1985?
I think it was in
right before the wall fell.
I thought it was 88, 89 or something like that.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I mean, it was just right
during
before
Perestroika, I believe.
Yeah.
But this is when he was a kid. Now, you got to remember, when he was a kid, he was about 10, 15 years older than me. I'm pretty sure he was at least a decade older than me.
Yeah.
And so when he was a kid, it was in the 70s.
70s, yeah.
And that was at the height of the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy was living in a Soviet era house, you know. So so there wasn't no moving because there was something creepy happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that house that he was living in, okay, was notoriously haunted. There were people who talked about it, that there was a witch that had lived in that house, and this is the story behind it, that she was killed during World War II. Okay.
Oh, it was an old house.
Yeah, she was a witch or whatever, and that she was killed, you know, during combat. There was fighting that went on in that region, and supposedly she was killed. Okay, and that but after the war, people would see her moving around in that house, and that it stayed vacant for a while. Okay, but then eventually his dad was given that house. They renovated it.
Right.
The party did, because he worked for the party. And so they gave him the house, and he performed a higher official function in that town. And so he was given a little better living situation.
I mean, with
it was a house that was taken probably from somebody, and then you know, and then of course,
higher position, better living conditions.
Who knows if the story about her being killed by the Germans or whatever was true or whatever. They said that she was a witch, and that the townspeople, when the Germans had come in, this was the story, that when they had laid down on the town, that the townspeople turned her in to the Germans. Yeah, well, I don't know when, but they turned her in because they wanted her to be killed because she was evil. And so the Germans obliged them. So that's the story. I don't know if that's the truth.
Just the story he gave you, right?
Just the story he gave us, yeah. And so he goes, I don't know if it's true, but that's what they was told. So, you know, I can't do his voice, but that's, you know. So he said that was the story, was that she was a witch that was executed, okay, because supposedly she had abducted kids and things like that. Well, for whatever the story was behind it, she was very wicked, and he had a scar on his left arm, and I'll never forget, and it went up his arm, like starting from the bottom, from in between the elbow, going up his arm, and it looked like claw marks.
Are you serious?
Like 3 gashes that he claimed happened from this Baba Yaga, Baba Goga, whatever, that had attacked him. Now, the first sighting of this thing, I think he said he was like 6 or 7, and he was asleep, and his older brother was a couple years older than him. They slept in the same bed, and the door opened up slightly. Now, he said he had an uncle that would drink sometimes, and he could hear him, like, you know, arguing with his wife. And they thought, oh, maybe they're arguing, whatever. And so he just rolled over to go back to sleep. But then he hears something bang on the wall. And so it woke him and his brother back up real quick, like, whoa. And then they thought, maybe he's really drunk, you know? Well, somebody peeked their head in through the door. And it did indeed look like the uncle.
Oh.
But they noticed that there was a hand that was wrapped around the door. And the hand looked like it had, like, long fingers that didn't match the uncle.
Right, bony, stuff like that?
Yeah, well, he didn't say bony, but yeah, there was a hand, and there were claws coming off of it. And they thought, that's not our uncle.
Right.
You know, and then the face, when they turned toward the light, they could see that the face had like this sparse hair on the top of its head, and it was a pointy-headed entity with a feminine-looking face. And that it, like, slammed the door. and that was the first time they ever saw it. Okay.
What a mind job.
Yeah,
Right then and there.
and so yeah, and and the whole time he's telling us this, we're working in this renovated this building that they're renovating, turning it from a rest home. There were a lot of people had died.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And there were rumors at that rest home where we were working
that
a nurse had actually murdered some of the patients or some of the elderly.
The elderly residents.
And there was an investigation. I don't know, if she was convicted or what.
Smokes.
But there was all this weird stuff happening, and it was like, and we're over here, and part of that area was dark at night, and he's over here telling us these stories, me and one of the workers, and we're sitting there going like, dude, and then you got to go do your rounds, and you're like, whoa. And now I had to do rounds.
What was the lighting like in that?
It was very dark. Yeah. And I had to do my rounds. He was on the east wing. All he had to do was sit there. And I would say the east wing was probably the most lit up and the least creepy. And so I had to actually do the foot patrol to the west wing or whatever. And he just sat on the east side. And so when we would talk, I would go and I'd do my rounds. That's when we would talk. So he's telling me these stories, and I'm just getting like creeped out. I'm like, okay, now I gotta go do my rounds. Now, did have something weird happen to me there a couple times, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. But yeah, you can imagine. So when he's telling me these stories, it was creepy, And so we would sit there, and he would tell me this whole series of events that took place. Another, I don't know if this happened right after the first episode encounter, but it happened shortly after.
Correct. Okay.
And he was in his room playing, and he said that, the Soviet era, they didn't have a lot of toys, but he had a couple little cars, whatever him and his brother were playing with.
Mm-hmm.
And they noticed that one of them, there was another toy that they had lost that they couldn't find. And it rolled by itself out of the closet. Now, this is going to freak you out, dude. Okay. So his brother looks at him, and at that point there were two brothers and a cousin. They were all playing, and one of the cousins, the youngest, they told him, "Hey, go grab it. Go grab that." And so he's like, So they told him, "Go grab it," and he says the older brother put his fist up like he's going to hit him,
punch you.
So he goes to crawl over there. Now in front of all 4 or 5 of these kids, this long arm comes out, and when the kid puts the hand on the little fire truck, the long arm comes out of the closet and puts it down on top of this kid's hand.
Holy smokes.
And it's dark in the closet, and they don't see what this is, and they're like, start screaming, and everybody's running in different directions, and his one brother literally knocked himself out running into a wall. Like, he ran into a wall, and then he fell over the bed and like rolled. And so everybody's freaking out, and the little cousin who's sitting there, he's just screaming with his eyes closed and is not moving his arm. And then they look, and they don't see the arm. It was real quick. And so then then of course the dad comes in there. He said his dad drank a lot. So did the uncle. And so they came in and, "Why are you screaming? We beat you," And so they were like, this thing, the Baba Yaga, whatever, it did
Baba
this.
Yaga.
But whatever, it did this. Well, they had a different name for it. It was something else.
Right.
Like, there's different names and different the Baba
regions,
Yaga, Baba Goga, Baba
Yaga Baba,
whatever.
Well, we'll just lay it out there. It's Baba Yaga.
Yeah, Baba Yaga. So the Baba Yaga grabbed the kid, and so they screamed, and then of course they got their butts whooped. Soviet era dads don't want to put up with much. They just drink vodka and they're angry. I mean, wouldn't you be? I mean, you're in the freezing cold, and it's
in a communistic
countries, and then you're being attacked by the Baba Yaga. So it's not the pleasant experience coming in.
Yeah.
So they're having all these problems with this thing. Now, here's another incident that happened. Now, this one is one I remember because he told me several, but this one was really creepy. And I had wrote these down in my little journal that I was keeping, back then for the paranormal stuff that I would encounter. And he said that one day he was laying there in his room, and he was under punishment. He got in trouble. He didn't do his homework or something like that. And so he was laying there, and his family was eating dinner, and the door creaks open. It was a creaky door. Like he said, he goes, the door open, and the way he did.
He gave you the sound effect?
He did do the sound effect, yes. And he's like, the door creak, and then I'm sitting there, and I see, and he said that he saw a shadow over the ceiling. And he said that he saw the arms come in, over the door paneling first.
Wow.
And that the shadow itself like pushed the door.
Oh, man.
And he said that he knew it was this Baba Yaga because it had the pointy head, and he said that it like a shadow, like it was kind of like at first it was like solid, then it became a shadow,
Right.
then it was solid again. If that makes any sense, I'm trying to wrap my mind around the way that he was telling me that, when he's telling me. But then he said that once it came in, it was crawling really fast over the ceiling. And
Man.
so he saw it, and so he sat up and he started to scream, but he didn't. He was so terrified of his dad and getting a beating
Holy
that
crap.
he didn't totally react. He just sat there like wanting to scream, torn between screaming and
And getting punished
yeah, from
again.
the way he was describing it to me.
Wow, that's nuts, man. I would be freaking out too. I mean, watching a black mass pushing open your bedroom or your closet in your bedroom, pushing that door open, and then becoming more ethereal, and then you see the shape of hands and everything else, and then it starts crawling all over your ceiling. Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, I don't actually. I think that it was actually his bedroom door. I believe that's what it was.
Either way, that's still freaky.
Yeah, and
Wow.
this guy told, I think Scorp might have worked with him too. There was a few guys that from back in the day that we worked together
Yeah.
at that company, and they probably remember him and his stories. But I know that, and Pete, if you're listening, you probably remember this too. This guy, because I worked with him around the time that Pete lived with me, and I remember this guy just telling me some creepy stories, dude, about that house, And it didn't all center around him like it happened to his brothers and stuff too.
Kind of like you. I mean, you lived in that haunted house for 10 years and all sorts of stuff happened there, but it wasn't just to you.
No, it
Everybody
wasn't.
got a piece of
Everybody
it.
got part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty equal opportunist.
Yeah.
Equal opportunist.
Yeah.
This thing, what it did though, like it crawled and it went up to like over his bed, and he said that it turned almost in like a mist, and it started to kind of drip down, and it was morphing into a female form. And so he got up and ran out of the room. He didn't care at that point. He wasn't. He took the beating and just was like whatever.
Man.
Now he said that there was one time when he was in the bed with his brother again when they were little, and this thing it did something very similar. It crawled across the ceiling again. His little brother nudged him, woke him up. He looks up. They see it, but it's in its full form. And he said it was like this yellowy looking creature. And he said that it was long, skinny arms, long, skinny legs, and it had this pot belly, and you could see the breasts. It was like nude.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that it started to like kind of drip down from the ceiling. Now I didn't really understand what he meant by that, and he had an accent, but he had been living here for a while, so it wasn't like he couldn't speak.
Be understood.
Like
Yeah.
he wasn't like he couldn't you couldn't understand him.
Yeah.
And so he was making like he was able to speak and say what he was going through.
Thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, it dripped down. Like he said, it was like if it drips, like something, and like it was liquid. And then the arm came down and reached down and like touched his brother's chest. And then you could see this like ball kind of turn and become the face. And as it turned, you could see like this mouth form. And the mouth was like these big, sharp, jaggedy looking teeth, and it
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
thinking-
snapped at them, and then they ran out of the room.
Oh,
And of course, the whole time, the grown men in the house are in denial of this. So, these kids are being terrorized by this thing. And then there was another incident that happened to his brother that this didn't actually happen to him, but he said that his older brother they had a basement that they had to go down and get like preserves and stuff like that. They canned a lot of their own foods.
right.
And so he went down into the basement, and everybody was scared to death to go down there because they knew that this thing would be down there.
Yeah.
And so they would usually go in twos or threes, and they would grab the food real quick and run up. Well, he said one time his brother had to go down there, and his dad said, just go. It didn't give him a chance to bring another kid with him.
Mm-hmm.
So he went down there to get some beets or whatever it was that they ate. And he was going down the stairs, and as he got toward the bottom of the stairs, this thing reached up and grabbed him by his leg and pulled him down and started to try to pull him underneath the stairs. and he was kicking and screaming and yelling, and then his shoe came off, and that afforded him the ability to get loose and then run back up the stairs, which he got a beating because
He came back with
yeah,
nothing.
and the whole time the dad and the brother or whatever, and of course the moms, one of the moms, I guess the aunt believed him,
Yeah.
but didn't really do any good because they were just like, okay, shut up, and they would beat her too. So
yeah,
nobody could.
Yeah, be quiet, woman. You know.
Yeah, they're drunks. So
Yeah.
but things got a little better because their younger brother, who was a little younger than the other two, the uncles.
Yes.
He came to live with them. And he was actually straight out of the military. He was a very smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew immediately what this was.
Oh.
And so he told them this is the Baba Yaga, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it's it's an evil
Spirit.
demonic spirit that's a female.
Mm-hmm.
And that they take over like people's domiciles and all this stuff.
Kind of like an incubus.
Yeah, kind of. But it would they would pray. They would do this prayer. Because I guess they were Orthodox, and so they
Eastern
would
Orthodox
Orthodox, yeah. So they would say this prayer that he would say, and for a while everything was fine, and then the younger brother could actually was pretty tough, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So he would kind of get on to the other two about beating the kids and yelling at them. So he would protect them, and so he kind of put a stop to that. Like, I guess it stopped because when my uncle came, he
was the catalyst to stop all this stuff.
Yeah, and when a lot of the negativity and all the violence slowed, then the activity from this thing slowed down. And then eventually,
makes sense.
The uncle eventually though moved out.
Oh.
And then after it moved out, then the activity spiked again.
Mm.
But before he moved out, there was an incident that happened to him. To my friend, this guy I worked with. This was the last story that I remember him actually, it happened to him. This was pretty bad. He woke up and this thing was just standing there over him, over his bed, in the foot of his bed, and it was leaned down and had its arms on the post of the bed, and it was, but the arms were so long it could contort itself.
Right.
It was leaned over him and it was like drooling. And he said that he could smell the breath. It was like putrid. And this thing was leaned over him, and it was just like, it was like whispering.
Oh.
And he couldn't make out what it was saying. And he woke up and he just said that this thing screamed, and it like so bad that it felt like his ears were going to bleed. But nobody else woke up or got up or noticed or did anything. And even his brother, who was in the bed right next to him, did not see the entity. He couldn't wake him up. And so this thing just started laughing, and it grabbed him by his feet, wrapped in the blanket, and started to drag him out the door and down the hallway. And while he was being drugged, he was scratching and clawing on the walls, trying to get down the hallway, beating on it with his fist. And the younger uncle that lived on the floor with them came out of his room. What he saw was just like a greenish, a yellowish green mist, like a fog, that was like in front of him as he was moving down the hallway. That's all he saw.
Oh man!
He didn't see like the figure, yeah. But he did have an incident. His uncle, now of course, the uncle goes and grabs him, and it immediately lets go. And so sometimes he would be able to go and sleep in the uncle's room with him, but his dad would be kind of mad because he wants him to be a man and not be a baby. And so he tried to limit that, but he said the only time he felt safe was when the uncle was there. And then he said that there was another time that that his uncle was shaving. This happened to his uncle, which made his uncle believe that there was something going on, because this was like maybe a week after he'd gotten there.
Right.
And he said that the uncle was shaving and he was looking in the mirror, and he said that something popped up out of the bathtub and grabbed his arm, and like he couldn't really make out the facial features of it. It looked like a blur.
Right.
But it was yellow. And it grabbed him by his arm and tried to push the razor onto his neck.
Holy Jesus.
And so, yeah, you telling me, it was just, so he got loose, got away, but it did cut his face,
Yeah.
and he got out of the bathroom or whatever. And then there was another incident where he was taking a bath and something tried to push his head under the water.
The uncle?
The uncle, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so that he knew that there was something going on there. So yeah, so there was a lot of weird stuff that happened in that particular house with that.
Two things with that, brother. This entity, I guess that's the proper word. This entity, first question is the appearance to your friend, right? And the incident, he's drugged down the hallway. Uncle comes out and he sees nothing but mist, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that brings to mind.
He didn't say mist though. He said like a blurry fog.
A blurry fog, right?
Yeah.
Well, but the thing I'm getting at is your friend was seeing this figure.
Mm-hmm.
The uncle was seeing like a blurry fog. So could that be that this thing was keying in on his vibration or his frequency?
That's what I'm thinking.
Right?
I mean, that makes sense.
Everybody has their own unique frequency or
mm-hmm.
they're in their own,
wavelength.
Yeah, their own wavelength, if you will. Each individual person has their own vibrational frequency, right? So maybe this thing was keying in on him, and that's why the uncle didn't see the figure, because it wasn't keyed in on his own frequency. You know what I mean? On his vibrational frequency. That's the first thing, when you mentioned that got me. The second thing I started thinking about, which, of course, when you mentioned earlier about how he said that it started dripping from the ceiling. That right there, to me, it was reminiscent. I started thinking in terms of, I guess for people, if you're thinking about it, I was thinking about how, you remember the Terminator with the metal Terminator that was liquid metal? Kind of like that. It had that type of ability. I mean, that's
weird. I don't know about that. I mean, I'm
talking about just in the manner how it could just fluidly move.
Yeah.
If it was faced with,
like, if it was a physical form, then it would look like that. Maybe. I don't know.
No, I'm just saying the ability to drip.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then start contorting.
I think it was more like a fog that just kind of it could
would materialize.
Yeah.
Right, okay. But it just sounded so weird, because that's the first thoughts I got when, he was saying it started dripping from the ceiling.
Now, there's another story.
That's crazy. Yeah, go ahead.
There was only one girl, that was his cousin.
Mm-hmm.
One of the kids, it was a girl.
Right.
And she went down into the basement, cellar, whatever it was, when they were playing hide and seek. There was a bunch of them that were playing hide and seek. Now, this happened when they first moved in.
Right.
And it was one of the first things that happened. Not the first thing that happened to him, because what happened to him,
right.
I told you.
Oh, so she got to experience it first.
Yeah, there were other kids that had this thing or whatever.
They experienced it before him.
Yeah, they had the pleasure of getting to experience it. Horrifying, whatever. This one was pretty messed up. This particular story. They were playing hide and seek, and he didn't actually see this, but his brother and one of his cousins did. And they were downstairs and they were playing, and so they decided to play hide and seek using the downstairs and the basement as the only two places where you could go, because the upper levels were for whatever,
the adults.
Yeah. So they're playing downstairs, and the little girl goes to hide or whatever, goes down because I guess hide and seek is pretty much universal everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So they're playing like chase or hide and go seek, whatever. He called it chase, but I think that's actually what he was trying to say. It was hide and seek. Something grabbed her. Okay. Once again, it was right under the stairs. And when she got close to it, something reached out and with these long arms. Okay.
Right.
And grabbed her and pulled her into the darkness under the stairs. And she, even as an adult, she talked about this to him. Okay. And she remembers screaming and yelling and fighting for her life, but nobody was hearing anything. All the little brother of the girl saw, which would have been his cousin, was these arms come out, these yellow arms come out and grab her and pull her under the stairs. And then that was it. And so he's shocked.
Right.
He's just standing there and it's dark. He can't see.
Whoa.
Okay. So there's very little light in that room. So the older brother runs up the stairs to turn the light switch on, to get more light, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they had like a little flashlight that they were playing with, and the flashlight went dead immediately.
Oh man!
So the older brother runs up the stairs, and all he could see was from the door being open was just like a little bit of light. And when they turned the light on for a split second, he could see this thing with its arms and its legs wrapped around the little girl, and the little girl's eyes were rolled back in her head.
Holy Jesus!
So what is that? I mean, what it was just a weird. And then when the light came on, this thing like moved its neck, past the little girl,
right.
according to what the cousin told him, and snapped its teeth at him, and then was gone. Boom! And the little girl just like came crawling out from underneath the base of the stairs.
The stairs. Wow, man. Yeah. Well, first, when it's going after the boys, I'm thinking incubus.
Mm-hmm.
Going after the girl, I'm thinking succubus.
But I don't think that's what it was.
No,
I think it was just an evil entity.
Yeah.
And they said it looked very feminine. It had long, skinny arms and a pot belly, like I said. And the feet were very weird looking. And they said that the feet almost looked like the skeleton's feet, the way they would describe it.
Right.
The hands were really bony.
Yeah.
Very pointy head,
Strange.
And that one time, his oldest brother had gone to the bathroom, and at first nothing was really happening to him, so he was kind of like poo-pooing it, like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to go to the bathroom, and he hears like somebody bang on the door, like boom, boom, boom. And so he thinks it's one of his little brothers, so he's like, screw off.
Yeah, leave me alone.
I'm taking a leak.
Mm-hmm.
Then he hears boom, boom, boom. So then he opens the door. There's nobody there. Once he's done doing his business, so he goes to walk down the hallway, and it was a really long hallway with like 4 bedrooms down that hallway.
Right.
So it's pretty long. And he sees this thing rolled up almost like in a ball at the end of the hallway. So it unfurls itself like straight out, almost like a really elongated body.
Right.
The arms and legs are sticking out of either side of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes crawling toward him on all fours really fast.
Holy
and then he lifts up its
smokes.
head, and the head is there, and it's like just running towards him. And so he takes off running down the hallway. And he said it felt like when he was running down the hallway that the distance was getting longer and that this thing was getting closer. And so he got into his room, ducked in the room, closed the door, and he hears a bang on the door, and that was it.
Wow.
So that, I don't know what that is. How do you explain that? I don't know what that is.
That sounds to me like, your classic, your poltergeist type stuff, You remember that movie Poltergeist with all the kind of different things that was going on in the house? And
I need to go rewatch that movie
because I don't remember the Amityville Horror.
I don't really remember that one either very much. I know that there was a bunch of stuff.
We're talking
that
originals, folks.
Didn't the blood come from the walls?
Yeah,
Something pretty ridiculous. I mean,
right, but a horror movie, that was groundbreaking, for its time. But as far as the Poltergeist, I was, big Poltergeist fan for a long time, but a lot of things, in those Poltergeist movies is like they would have these, like skeletons coming out of the ground, that kind of stuff, and then entities showing up looking full form human, et cetera, in these movies. I don't know anything after Poltergeist 3. I only saw the first 3. I didn't care for the other ones because by that time they usually
the other ones.
If there are other ones, I don't know, but I know that there was just they were
the
getting
guy that
campy.
Played Coach was in that.
Yeah, he was in the third one, and. Yeah, it just reminds me of something that could happen.
Well, I don't think, but there again, I don't think that this was because they lived in this house for like 4 years.
Well, yeah, they kind of didn't have a choice.
And so I don't think it was all the time.
Right. It probably a lot like you.
That's what I'm thinking because I mean, I actually asked him like how often this happened, and he's like, not very much, but when it happened, it was terrifying.
Yeah, man. So that's just crazy though. Rolled up in a ball at the end of the hallway, and as soon as he steps out of the bathroom,
it unfurls itself and runs toward him.
And it's crawling like on all fours.
On all fours.
And it's kind of like a spider kind of walk type
That's
deal?
all that I could think of. I mean, and it was like just a terrifying thing. And then he had another incident, where this thing was crawling around on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looked like it was moving on the wall like a shadow, and then it crawled. And this happened to the older brother and the second oldest brother. They were in a different bedroom
Together.
Yeah, them two together.
Yeah.
And it kind of like did the same thing, but it kind of like came down onto the bed and crawled underneath the blankets with them.
Holy
And it
smokes.
scratched both of them.
Wow.
Yeah, and according to the guy I was working with, he got the scratch because the thing had grabbed. I think he said that when it had tried to grab him.
Yeah, I was just about to ask
like
you about that.
Yeah, and one of the incidents where it grabbed him, and I don't remember. He told me, 4 or 5 of them, but those are the main ones I remember that I wrote down. And it was one of the incidents where it grabbed him, like I think it might have been when it was coming off the ceiling or whatever, it grabbed him when he tried to run out of the room.
Mm-hmm.
It cut him or whatever, it grabbed him. So it did physical damage. It bit one of his cousins on the foot.
Holy smokes.
He woke up and this thing was like, it just bit his foot. Yanked his, aunt out of bed. It did something to her too. Like, the dad and the other brother were always drinking, so they weren't, they were working. The one worked a manual labor job. The other one worked for the party.
Right.
He was a political guy, so he was always working.
Man.
And when he was home, he was drunk and wasn't listening to what they had to say. He didn't care.
If he was drunk, most of the time that thing couldn't do anything to him anyways because he's completely passed out drunk. Probably. I don't know.
It's not going to matter to him. Yeah. If something does happen, he thinks it's a dream, probably.
Yeah, that's if he is dreaming, when he's stone cold drunk,
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? And that's speculation that he's a complete and total drunk to that level or not. We don't know, but I would say it's probably got some truth.
Well, he
to
said
it.
he was a drunk.
Oh, he did?
Said,
okay.
Yeah, he said his dad and his uncle were both drunks. They were alcoholics,
but that's just freaky. I mean, this thing, it sounds like this thing really had it in for him when it came around. Or when it showed. I don't know if the terms come around. More like when it decided to mess with them is probably more appropriate.
And we really don't know the origins of this thing either.
Correct.
Or what caused it. There's a legend about how it came to be, but
right.
Nobody knows for sure.
That's true. And then we go back and like we always say, where did this house, this town, wherever it's at, where was it or what's its location in relation to ley lines? We're intersecting ley lines where the veil is a lot thinner. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because
definitely something demonic.
Yeah, it's definitely evil. It wanted to harm them. I mean, mm-hmm. there was
and it was doing a good job of it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
stuff would happen too. Like they were looking out the window,
right?
And this was kind of funny. I think he said something like, this was his older cousin, the oldest one or whatever.
Yeah.
They were in trouble, so they decided to try to fly a kite outside the window.
Oh, because they couldn't go outside?
They couldn't go outside. And so they tried to fly a kite, and it ended up like getting tangled in a tree. Right. And so they're trying to undo it or whatever, and the kid leans out of the window, and the window closes on his arm and breaks his arm.
Holy
and then the window pane broke out, So that kind of stuff was going on pretty on the reg, but it was, the thing that got me was like, I mean, like when he told the stories, like he was very,
very matter of fact about it.
And then he said that now I said, did anything ever happen once you left that house? He goes, no, nothing. He goes, we leave that house, no problems. I come to the United States, nothing. Here's what happened. Black-eyed kid story, okay? Until the black-eyed kid story that happened to him.
Right.
He always thought that it might have been related to that. That's what he thought. But here's what he told me. He was living in an apartment, okay, in South Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And after the incident took place,
right,
at the place we worked at together, the Black-Eyed Kids, he moved to South Austin, got an apartment. This is weird. Right after the Black-Eyed Kid thing happened, he saw this entity again, which is weird.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
and he said there were 2 different incidents in that apartment.
Really?
Yeah, and then it never happened again. But it was like right after the Black-Eyed Kid thing. He was asleep on the couch. He was watching TV, and he heard something moving around but in the kitchen. Like something was moving around. When he woke up, he heard what he thought was like something messing with like a chip bag, like chips.
Right.
And he heard like sliding, like something sliding around the floor or something, like somebody was shuffling their feet.
Okay.
That's my words. He just said something sliding, shuffling, which I thought maybe he heard footfall. Okay, that's me saying that. I want to put my words in there, but that's what I think. And he woke up, and when he got up and he walked over to the kitchen, he saw this thing standing there. And then it just like it started to come toward him, and then it just disappeared.
Wow.
And then it brought back all the memories of when he was a kid. A lot of even he had blocked out, and that's what he'd said in it, and it came back, all of it. Then he had another incident where he was in the bathroom and he was taking a shower, and when he got out, like he heard something moving around in his bedroom.
Right.
And he goes, the bathroom was connected to the bedroom, so he goes and he opens the door, and he hears like this popping, like a pop, pop, pop. Like, you know how you hear, he described it to me as the plastic.
Oh, when you pop the little plastic bubbles?
Plastic bubbles.
Yeah.
And he heard that, like, and he looks, and this thing was like what he thought was like under his bed.
Holy smokes.
And he closed his eyes and blinked a couple times, and it was gone. And he was like, whoa. So he checked his apartment. Nothing was there.
Man.
And then that was it. But then he said he had like a couple nightmares. And I was like, are you sure they were nightmares? He goes, yeah, I really believe they were just nightmares because of what I saw. That's what he said. And he didn't go into detail about the nightmares. So that was that.
I think it was a little reminder, that, hey, I haven't forgotten about you, dude. It's creepy. I mean, to say the least, he went through all those horrific, events as a kid, thanks to that thing, that Baba Yaga. And, then many years later, he sees black-eyed kids, which kind of tripped him out, but he wasn't really freaked out. You know what I mean? And then moves to an apartment after the fact. Some time passes, he moves to an apartment, and then that thing comes back to pay him another visit.
Yeah, here's the timeline to it, though, folks. He said that when that black-eyed kid thing happened, that it was the weirdest thing that ever happened to him. And he didn't even think about the stuff that happened to him as a kid. He said it was almost like distant memories that he had buried until shortly after the black-eyed kid thing.
Yeah.
Then he had this encounter with this thing.
Yeah.
And then he woke up all those other memories, and he was like, okay, well, I guess that's not the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, because I remember having all these things happen to me with this entity. I asked him about his brothers and his sisters, his cousins and all that, or his cousins. And
everybody that lived in that house.
Yeah, everybody. And he said that, unfortunately, the one uncle ended up being thrown in jail. The good uncle, yeah. Because they wanted him to go back to the military or something, and he didn't. So they caught him and they put him in gulag or whatever, where he died. So that was tragic. The other uncle died of cirrhosis, whatever, and then his dad committed suicide. Oh. So it was a very sad, very tragic turn of events that took place in this guy's life. And he thought that a lot of that was connected to that house, because he thought that his dad became more alcoholic
because that negative
energy around there. And of course, the brother, his brother had gone back to the military, and then he went AWOL. I don't know the whole story, but he was supposed to serve longer or something. And
right.
So they caught up to him, and he was trying to escape, I guess, defect. And so, anyways, he ended up dying in jail, and then the other uncle died of cirrhosis of the liver. Dang. His mother, she lived to be, older or whatever, and she eventually moved, I think, to Germany or something. And then the other aunt or whatever, she also became an alcoholic and died.
Oh man,
of cancer or something. But there was all this like bad stuff that happened. His one cousin died in a car wreck, and he thinks it had a lot to do with living in that house. He thinks it was a curse. And then he did talk to a couple of the others. Like he still keeps in touch with them. And after he talked to one of them about that, the one cousin said he had no memory of it.
Really?
But his brother did, and his brother and him were still very close. And he said that his one brother told him that he remembers it, and he had nightmares about it for years. But like the one cousin's mind has just been erased from that whole time period.
You know what that's called, brother?
Cognizant. What is it?
No.
Cognitive dissonance.
Compartmentalization.
Compartmentalization.
He's got the defense mechanism set it up so it gives him basic. It's compartmentalized into his, a certain part of his brain, so he is able to wall it off and not think about it. It's like I guess. Let me find the proper words. I guess it would be kind of like a self-induced amnesia because it's blocking it.
Well, that's kind of what was going on with him.
Yeah, exactly.
Until that, and then
it just brought it all back, right?
Yeah,
all the
and
memories.
then we worked together, and he had told me, because shortly after the Black Eyed Kids thing is when he had the visitation from the Baba Yaga, which is crazy. All that but folks, that's all the time we have for today.
That's just nuts, man.
And let's just hope that the Baba Yaga don't get you.
Yeah, because I tell you what, the Baba Yaga, that's. To me, when they say Baba Yaga, I think kukui. The kukui, like we say,
just like the kukui,
doesn't have a real shape, form, whether feminine or nothing. When your parents told you as a young Hispanic kid, el kukui, you didn't know what it was. You didn't know what it could do either. So your biggest fears, whatever you could imagine,
but Baba Yaga would be more like la chusa. La lechuza, I think.
The bruja lechuza, the whole lechuza thing, yeah. Yeah, because the bruja, and when you think of la bruja and la lechuza in Mexican folklore, they're kind of, for lack of better words, joined at the hip. One becomes the other becomes,
And like I said, that's all the time we have for today, folks.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
We could keep going, but
we could, folks. But there's money constraints on how long we can do stuff. So that's why, folks, if you want to donate and just send both of me and old Sal here big old checks, and we can
for $1 billion,
and then we could just talk as long as you want.
Yeah,
we'll just sit here and go through all these stories, and we'll read them all, and then we run out, and then we'll just sit here and twiddle our thumbs, and you pay us for doing that.
Awesome, but hey, folks, it's been great to be here, and I'm glad you guys are joining us more and more all the time, and you wait for our show to come out every Friday. Thank you so much. With that being said, remember, send us your stories. We want to hear them. And send them to
DasWolfman88@gmail.com
and or wolfandsal@gmail.com.
Or you can private message me if you got me on Facebook, or hit me up.
Yeah,
let me know that you're a fan, so I'll approve you.
And hey guys, you can catch me, on Facebook, Old Sal. I'm there, and if you want, if you can't send the story to Wolf here, send it to me. It all comes to the same place because we get it together and then read them over, and then that's how we decide. And we
take your crappy stories, we throw them away, so no one will ever. And then we threaten you, don't ever send us that garbage again.
So we get them, we separate them, and we categorize them, and
Yep. And if they're unusual, like there's a couple that we had.
They go into their own special box.
Little file, and like that's one that's going to be told. I'm gonna have to tell you. But we got all kinds of stories, guys. All right, so that's it for tonight, and thank you for joining us.
See y'all next time.
See ya.